Well, there's never been a time in the history of Earth with more star seeds, more light workers present on the planet. And of course, the reason for that is because this is a time when there is a need for much more support, energetically speaking. War only emerges from the misperception of separation. If that perception of separation was not there, there would be no war. That wouldn't exist, because when we say that all is one and everything is divine, and you start to feel into the truth of that, what underlies that truth is a feeling tone or a vibration of reverence. That it is likely, if you find this content interesting, that you are already having interactions with those that you may describe as ETs or star beings. You are already having that interaction, because we don't wish to show up and have that be a jarring event for your physicality.
Karen Bell, welcome on Just Tap In. What are you most excited about right now in your life?
Oh my gosh, there's so much to be excited about. That's hard to narrow it down. I'm really excited because I'm looking over your shoulder and I just see you have that six-pointed star, and you can't see it because of the light, but I have the same thing. This white picture right here is the same.
We're matching.
Yeah, dude, we're so matching. So I'm excited about that. No, I'm excited about a lot of things. I'm excited about this work that we're doing. Both of us are kind of on the same frequency, right? I'm excited about that. There's so much to be grateful for, so much to be excited about. That's a beautiful question, right? Because it encourages us to focus our mind in that direction.
Exactly. And excitement is one of the highest frequencies, and it really brings out the inner child,
Yes.
which we'll be talking about later on in the episode. But
Nice.
Before that, when I was listening to your story, I thought a lot about, it's so funny, during the pandemic, we would have this lady that would come to the house and cut our hair. I was staying in Madrid, but my family was telling me about this. And it was a lady that she was cutting my dad's hair, and my dad isn't really very, in tune with these topics, but she just looks at him, and while she's cutting his hair, and she just goes, "You're going to get, like, the job's going to do well. Like, it's going to turn out all right." And then my dad's like, cause he was in the middle of changing a job situation.
Amazing.
And she just came down with like this psychic impression on him, gave him a message, but she's like cutting his hair. And when I heard your story in the 2000s, you were a makeup artist.
Yes.
And you were, doing makeup on people, and all of a sudden you started getting messages and psychic impressions for people. What was that experience like?
Well, it was very unsettling at first because I didn't know what was happening, and I didn't even have the words or the terminology to say that I was receiving psychic impressions. I just knew that I would be doing people's makeup, and similar to cutting hair, you're in the person's space, you're in their energy field. When it's fairly intimate, and so I would get these, I guess I would call them downloads now. I didn't know what they were then, but I would get these little downloads, and I would be aware of things about people that I shouldn't know. Even if the people mentioned their spouse or their child or even their dog or their cat, I would receive impressions about those loved ones in their life. So at first it was really unsettling, and I thought that I was the only one who was aware of this. But there must have been something going on that hinted to my coworkers that something was strange, because one day one of my close friends at work said to me, "Well, what is it like to be like that?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And she said, "What is it like to know things about people that you shouldn't know?" And so that was the moment that I realized, oh, there's something to this. Like, maybe I should pay attention to what's going on. This isn't normal. What's going on? And so one of the first things I did was just go to the bookstore and buy a stack of books on psychic ability and start reading, I started reading those. And then that inspired me to take a short course on it. And I realized, oh, this is what's happening. I'm just getting these messages, psychic impressions for the people sitting in my chair. But it started very subtle, right? And I didn't want to admit it to anybody because I thought it was so weird. I thought it was the weirdest thing ever. I didn't want other people thinking I was weird. It took me a long time to finally within myself to come to terms with, okay, I'm having these psychic experiences. I'm definitely a psychic. And then, over time, as the years went on, that progressed into mediumship. So a couple years after that, I started having experiences connecting with people's loved ones in the spirit world. So that was a whole new thing I had to wrap my mind around. Like, oh, okay, now I'm a medium too. And so for me, it was, I would say in the beginning, it was really unsettling. But over time, I think one thing that helped was I began to get to know other people that had, shared this interest or shared these abilities. Eventually, I got connected with a spiritualist church, and in spiritualism, they're very much all about mediumship in the spirit world. So over time, I became more comfortable with it. But I mean, this is 2005, 2006 that this started happening. So, it took a few years for me to get to the point where, number one, I understood what was happening, and number two, where I could be comfortable enough to talk to other people about it.
And there's this famous saying that goes, if you don't use it, you lose it.
Yeah.
So I can imagine when you started learning about psychic abilities, when you started doing the training, as you started doing and practicing it more, did it begin to start getting stronger for you, the messages that were coming in?
I would say so.
Or what was that like?
Yeah, I would say so. I think, some people confuse psychic and mediumship. So I'll just first talk about that for a second, because psychic abilities and psychic impressions really are just reading energy and reading energy fields. So especially when you're, in someone's space, you'll pick up on their energy, that kind of thing. Mediumship is different in the sense that that's communication. You're communicating with an extra dimensional being, whether that being is in the spirit world or another dimension. So for me, it started as just psychic. I was just receiving these psychic impressions, these intuitive impressions for me and for other people. And then as I explored it, as I trained, as I read about it, as I acknowledged that it was real and I didn't, try to discount it or talk myself out of it, then that's when the mediumship experiences started happening. I'd say that was about 2 years into it. And then it just evolved from there, because now the channeling I do is really, that was built upon the mediumship experience that I had. So it's kind of, I'm being shown right now, it's kind of like a little snowball rolling down a hill, right? That just was growing bigger and bigger and bigger. So
new gifts unlocked the more that you use them.
Yeah, but the thing is that I think everybody is psychic, actually. They just don't realize that they are. So this is, it's interesting, because everyone has access to all of these abilities. It's just that we live in a culture that is not really that comfortable with it, right? And so it's made fun of sometimes. It's denied, it's suppressed. But really, the word psychic means of the soul. So I like to remind people of that, because your psychic abilities are the way that your soul communicates with you. So if you're having psychic impressions and you're ignoring them, you're kind of cutting off communication with your soul and your higher self. So this is why it's important that we reconnect not only with our soul, but these abilities, or these ways of communication, the ways that communication takes place.
So before 2018, what did you know about the Andromeda star system?
Nothing. Nothing. Zero. I still actually feel like I don't know much about the Andromeda star system. So 2018 was actually a big year for me, in that I finally decided that I was going to take mediumship seriously. Because up until that point, I was comfortable giving psychic readings. I was comfortable calling myself an intuitive. But I wasn't really at the point where I was comfortable calling myself a medium. So 2018 was the year that I was like, okay, I'm finally going to study this. And I committed to studying with a teacher for a year. And I committed to going to my spiritualist church regularly. And that was the first year actually that I served as a medium at the church, meaning stood up in front of everyone and was offering mediumship demonstrations. But that was also the year where I committed to meditation, and when the guide that I channel, Sarai, started to show up. But she just initially showed up as this blue energy when I was meditating. So for the first few months, I don't even think I had an awareness that it was a being. It was just this beautiful energy. And, in the beginning, I thought, oh, this is just some spirit guide or, whatever this is. It was actually the color of my shirt today, always on my left. Get up and meditate very early in the morning, and that energy was there. Over time, I realized this energy had a very different feel to it than, let's say, the spirit world. It had a cosmic feeling. It was unlike anything that I had really experienced before. And so I think what was happening at that time is that we were developing a relationship, I think many people are comfortable with the fact that we have, our higher self, we have spirit guides, star beings, and extra dimensionals and extraterrestrial communication is kind of a leading edge concept, I think.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I think it's just where we're at. I think we're growing into it, and I think we need to talk about it in order for it to be more, for people to be more comfortable with it. But yeah, to me, it was like, okay, I'm having this strange experience, psychic experience. It feels like mediumship in the sense that I'm receiving the communication telepathically, which is how mediumship is facilitated, through mental mediumship or telepathic communication. So I was aware of that, but I was like, oh, this being, I can feel that it's from somewhere else. Right. So that was when I started to develop this relationship with this guide when I would meditate. And it was months of an unfoldment. It wasn't like all of a sudden. It was initially, I was just aware of the energy. Over time, I started doing some automatic writing. So I would feel these kind of transmissions or these downloads, and I would write them down. They were very short. That's actually how my YouTube channel started, was I would make shorts, like 1 minute, with these little transcripts. But I didn't say I was channeling. I would just repeat it, right? And so, so that was 2018 when that started, and then it's unfolded from there. I don't think I had a conscious intention to be a channel or to channel this guide. It just happened over the course of, since 2018 till now. So,
yeah. And I feel like the more you developed a relationship with this blue light, this blue being that appeared to you in meditation, there was questions that you started to ask this being. What were some of those initial questions that allowed you to get to know the energy even further, and what was its role in your life at that point?
Yeah, to be honest, I know it's strange, but I didn't ask a ton of questions, I think, because the interactions occurred always when I was in a meditative state, which to me is always in a more receptive state. That I would just sit in meditation and I would feel myself open, and then I would receive these, I guess, transmissions or downloads. So in the beginning, a lot of it had to do with wisdom about being an empath or a highly sensitive person and about misconceptions about what that is. Because what Sarai brought through initially was that she brought through a little formula about being an empath, which is an empath is an HSP plus ESP equals empath. So an empath is actually a highly sensitive person with extrasensory abilities. That's what an empath is. And so I thought that was brilliant. I was like, 100% that's true, right? Like
she's dishing out math equations and stuff.
Yeah, because I'm like, I just could relate to it. Because I'm like, I'm super highly sensitive. Everything is stimulating, like light, sound, everything, And then the extrasensory part is the other half of it. Because when people talk about empaths, they talk about empaths being aware of other people's emotions. But they don't actually talk about the clairsentient extrasensory ability that facilitates that process, right? So clairsentience is our psychic ability that is associated with feeling. So an empath has a heightened extrasensory clairsentient ability, and because of that, that's how they can pick up on the emotions of other people, whether that person is there in the room with them or on the other side of the globe. You could, give a first name to an empath of someone in another country, and they could tune in and pick up on their vibration, their emotional tone through their clairsentience. So it was really empowering for me, because I think, I'm not sure how it is now, but at that time, there was a lot of people dissing empaths, like people not wanting to call themselves empaths and people, right? So I thought that was interesting, because I felt really, okay, this is a gift. It's not a burden, right? This is something that we want to honor and acknowledge and utilize and understand. It doesn't make anyone better or worse. It's just that this is a unique quality that a lot of starseeds and lightworkers have to facilitate their gifts, right? They need to be sensitive in order to tune into these different dimensions and these different frequencies that are trying to be broadcast through them. That's the whole point. So they have to be sensitive to that in the beginning, so that they can start to tune themselves to that and then be this kind of broadcast mechanism for those different energetic frequencies. So.
And I know you know this, but we're living at very chaotic times in the world right now.
Yes.
I'm really curious to know, what is the role of a, let's say, refined empath who harnesses their gifts? Mm-hmm. What is their role in the world in the midst of all this chaos that is going on?
That's such a beautiful question. And I think I had a sense of what Sarai might talk about later today, and I think that'll speak to it. But so Sarai describes starseeds and lightworkers as these sort of broadcast devices, if you will. So they're here broadcasting these higher vibrational frequencies that will raise the consciousness of the planet. So if you identify as a starseed or a lightworker, then your role is really to align with that higher frequency and then become an emanation of it. So it's not as much, people get really caught up in what to do, right? Like, what's the action, or what do I do with my life, or what does that look like? How do I, make find a job that, right? It's all about the doing. So what Sarai says is that's maybe a secondary focus, but the initial or primary focus is emanating a frequency, emanating the highest frequency, right? The highest frequency that you have access to, whether that's your higher self or source energy, whatever you want to call it. You become an emanation of that, so that, yes, there's all this chaos unfolding in the world, but all that chaos is really representative of our past level of consciousness. Right? It's a reflection of our frequency from the past. So in order to shift into something that is more reflective of who we truly are and where we're going as a collective, then we have to shift into something higher. So the light workers are really here to be emanations and emanators of that higher frequency. And you do that first by tuning yourself like an instrument. Right? You tune yourself like an instrument, and then as best as you can, because nobody's perfect, but you just want to start to emanate that in your day-to-day life. Now, because we're all connected to each other, that shifts everyone, right? So even those of a lower frequency or a lower level of consciousness, that has an effect. And I think that's what I learned from the early psychic experiences. That's why those experiences were so powerful. It wasn't that, I'm special, or right, or I have this quote unquote gift. I hate it when people call it a gift, or all of that. It was, we are connected. We are all connected. Because if I can tune into someone, either whether they're right in front of me, which is how it started, or non-locally, if I can tune into someone and get and receive accurate information about them and about their life, that means that we are all intimately, energetically connected. And so what I do and what I think and what I emanate affects everybody. And so it's not just me. I know we experience ourselves as separate, but we are not separate. We are not separate. Right? So to become an emanation of a frequency that's more in alignment with source, which, I would say is unconditional love or passion or excitement, all of those frequencies, you are affecting the whole. And although you might look out at all the chaos and feel sometimes helpless that you can't do anything about it, if you focus on the energy work, you are making a powerful contribution at this time.
Yeah. And you brought up the name Sarai a couple of times now, and that is what later turned out to be that blue light that came through, an Andromedan collective of healers that are here to assist humanity. I'm curious to know why you feel that Sarai's teachings are so pertinent and fitting for the times that we're living in as a collective.
Right. So her teachings are very simple. They're not complicated, but they are super powerful. And so it begins with the awareness that who we are is more than this physical body. That here we are, we're experiencing life as these humans, but who we truly are, our true identity is so much more vast, right? We are souls, we're emanations of source energy. That's our true identity. So it begins there. And then the healing part, because when they first started coming through to me, there was an emphasis on healing. One of the first things that I was told, and one of the simplest parts of the teaching, is that healing, this is literally word for word what she said, healing is bringing a frequency into alignment. Healing is bringing a frequency into alignment. So then the question is, okay, how do we do that? How do we bring our energy into alignment? And what she teaches
and how do they get misaligned in the first place?
Yes, exactly. So we have to understand that there are these two elements of ourselves. At all times, there's our true identity, which is our soul self. And then there's this temporary experience of this human self with this physical body and this personality. And so that alignment piece means that we're wanting to align ourselves with the energetic that is our soul, because that is the purest emanation of source energy, or that frequency that represents source. So to answer your question, how do we get misaligned? Well, we get misaligned when we're born into this reality, and then we start taking on all of this lower frequency energy in the form of thought forms and subsequent emotions that are not reflective of truth, capital T truth, meaning aligned with source energy, but they're just thought forms from this particular collective or this particular level of consciousness, aren't necessarily true, but we get conditioned and programmed to kind of operate from those thought forms. Sarai calls that your mental construct. So your mind or your mental construct is this collection of thought forms that you're holding, beliefs, perceptions, right? And some of them serve you, but many of them, if not most of them, don't, because you tend to take on the thought forms and the beliefs of your caregivers or whoever was most influential to you at a young age. You tend to take all that on. Not all of those perceptions or beliefs are in harmony with the universe or with source energy. So that's how your frequency gets lowered, is that you start taking on all of these energies that aren't really yours. Right. And so to realign yourself and free yourself, you have to start to, she calls it kind of, first of all, examining your mental construct, which is, she describes it as starting to see yourself as in the same way that you see a computer, in the sense that your physical body is the hardware and your mind is the software, but you are the one sitting at the computer. You're the user or the observer or the witness. So when you start to position yourself as that, as the witness of your little human, we like to call it, you're the witness of this little human, you're watching what's going on within the mind, within the emotional body, and then you start to see, okay, none of that is really me. I'm the person observing it. And so as the observer, what's powerful too is I have the option to continue to activate those thought forms or beliefs, or I can choose something different. Right. And so when you, first of all, if you can release some of those thought forms that you witness or you observe are not serving you, and second of all, you can release those and start to rewire those, then that shifts your energy. And bit by bit, you shift back into connection and alignment with your soul self. So that's kind of the teachings in a nutshell. That's the premise. But what Sarai does, particularly in my Q&A sessions that I do with her, is that people will present whatever challenge or issues they're facing, and then she'll point out what the mental constructs or the thought forms or the beliefs are that's actually causing those issues or those challenges. Because now I feel like you definitely, and probably most of your audience, is aware that reality is reflective in the sense that we're always experiencing in our physical reality the energy, the thought forms, the beliefs that we're holding within our mind, right? So you begin to examine that, witness it, observe it, and then shift it. And then you start to feel that excitement, right, that we were speaking of earlier. Because that excitement is actually the vibrational indicator, I would say, that you're back in connection with your true self. Your true self. So sometimes you're just excited for no reason, right? I mean, you can have a reason, but sometimes you're just excited because you just feel happy to be alive. And that is the energy of the soul. The soul is so excited to just be here. The soul is so excited to have this experience of being human and all the different sensations and emotions. Like there's so much joy that the soul has for the opportunity to be here, right? No matter what chaos or challenge or stress is unfolding. If you start to tune into that, a lot of times the challenges that you feel like an energy of stuck with, like, oh, I just can't figure it out. Sometimes that'll start to dissipate because you're starting to align with a very different part of yourself, your true self.
The Satnam.
The Satnam. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Your true identity. Yes.
It seems very simple the way that you put it. And at the same time, some of the most simple teachings are the ones that require the most inner work to be able to do that shift and leap into breaking down the mental constructs that are limiting us, into stepping out and integrating with our soul. I would love to know, when you first, you mentioned that you started automatic writing in the beginning.
Yes.
And it wasn't only up until 2023 in February where it started becoming trance and vocal channeling.
Yes.
What is your process like for that, to get into a channeled state and go into fully trance?
Yes, so I was quite familiar with trance mediumship because I had been studying that. So I was quite familiar with shifting myself into an altered state because I had been studying that to support my mediumship, within spiritualism, and I had been studying with a teacher. I just did not expect that to start happening. And what actually happened was I had started my Patreon community, and as part of that, we meet every week to meditate together. So as I shifted my state into this meditative state, and it would be interesting to go back and see exactly what week it was that this happened, but I could feel my state shift, and then Sarai, rather than the writing, just started speaking. So that was really interesting. But to answer your question, how do I shift my state? Well, one thing I do every single day is I meditate, because when I'm meditating, what I'm doing is I'm practicing shifting my state. So there's a lot of different reasons that we can meditate. And, one reason is to distance yourself from your mind, which is a beautiful reason. But for me, as someone who's interested in mediumship and channeling, another reason is to practice shifting my state into an altered state of consciousness where I'm just open and receptive. I use breath work quite a bit. In fact, before this call, before any time I channel Sarai, actually, I do about a half an hour of breath work. Yoga helps as well. But it's really just about noticing for you what practices and what activities evoke that feeling of either excitement or joy or peace or a feeling of calm, right? It's different for everybody. The other thing I will say too is that to facilitate either channeling or mediumship, one thing that happens is there's a sort of blend. I call it the blend, which is when someone from the spirit world or an extra dimensional being wants to communicate either through mediumship or channeling, there's a sort of blend of energy fields that takes place. Now, one thing I found is that when a being is blending with me, that altered state almost just starts to happen physiologically as a result of that, right? So so basically what I do always is I kind of have a moment of surrender, a moment of asking to be connected with beings of the highest light and resonance, and then a feeling of, or almost a prayer or an invocation of just giving permission, right? So I give you permission to blend with me so that I can receive and transmit this energy and information. So the altered state is almost like a side effect of giving that permission and allowing that being to come and, blend with me so that we can have that connection.
Mm. How do you feel about blending your energy with Sarai right now?
I'd love to. Yeah,
Let's do it.
I could feel the excitement building. Actually, like about half an hour before we hopped on, I was like, oh, it's starting to build. So yeah.
She's been wanting to come in, say
She's
hello
been
real
wanting.
quick.
Yeah. And sometimes I'll get just like a sneak peek of the topic, which was so synchronous with what you've talked about so far. So yeah. So just give me a second. By the way, I also use essential oils. That's another way.
Oh, me too. I use that as well. Blue
So
lotus that I got in Egypt.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, so here's just a quick tip. So when you meditate, you can meditate with a specific oil, right? And then when you're wanting to shift your state, you just use that oil because you've been associating that scent with your altered state. So that's
it's like by association you drop in the
Yes.
state because it's a trigger for your brain to.
Exactly, yeah.
That's a great tip.
That's a channeling hack.
Channeled hacks. We'll get into a little bit more after the channeling.
All right, so it'll take me a couple minutes to shift my state. So give me a moment or two. And so we've very much been looking forward to this interaction, and we appreciate your participation in this interaction. And we also appreciate all of the work and dedication and devotion and the energy that you are pouring into this work that you are sharing on the planet at this time, this unfoldment. We see and sense and know that you are very much guided and in tune and in touch with your guidance from other realms. And so this will be a sort of familiar interaction for you, because what we'd like you to know right off the bat is that you've already had interactions with us. And so this broadcast that is seeking to take place will feel very much familiar to you. You've been in touch with this energy, this frequency, and this collective before. And so we'll begin on this day. What we'd like to share with you, what we'd like to focus on just for a few moments before we take questions, is we'd like to draw your attention to a specific word. And of course, all words are representative of a certain idea or thought form or belief or energetic frequency. But the word that we wish to bring through right off the bat to you on this day, to you and to those listening, is the word resolution. And so, if you will, just for a moment, begin to feel and sense into that energy that is behind the word resolution. And notice where you feel it in your physicality. Resolution. Now, what we'd like you to do with this word is begin to, first of all, examine, each and every one of you listening, begin to think about and examine your life from a sort of bird's eye perspective, meaning just for this moment in time, can you back up? Can you back up and begin to see and sense and witness your life from this sort of bird's eye perspective, meaning you ever so slightly distance yourself from whatever is going on in your life at this time? You could think of this in the same way that you go to a movie theater and you are watching a movie, you're watching and experiencing the storyline unfold. Begin to see and sense and feel and witness these circumstances, and specifically the current challenges or stressful events in your life. Begin to just perceive them, but see if you can perceive them at a bit of a distance, meaning you're not emotionally intertwined with these experiences. You're just noticing that they're there. And if you can, in this moment, also notice that these circumstances of difficulty, perhaps chaos, perhaps stress, carry within them a sort of vibrational frequency. There's an energetic feeling tone to that circumstance or situation. And so again, just from this bird's eye view, begin to feel into that. Begin to feel what the frequency or the vibration is behind that circumstance. And if it helps you to do so, you can close the eyes, close the physical eyes, and notice that as you close the physical eyes, and every time you close the eyes, what happens is you become more in tune with your clairsentient ability, your ability to feel energy. So you're seeing and you're sensing and you're noticing the energy of what is unfolding in your life at this time from a neutral perspective. And then, if you will, we begin to draw your attention, your awareness back to this word, resolution. Resolution. So as you now begin to focus on the word resolution, we'd ask you to now sense what it would feel like in your body, in your physicality, in your energy field, if this stressful situation, this circumstance, this challenge, what would it feel like if it were to be resolved? If it were resolved in this moment, then what would it feel like in my system? And take a moment to notice the variation in frequency between the challenge and the resolution of that challenge. And we ask you now to begin to draw as much of your energy and attention now on the feeling tone of resolution. And so withdraw your attention from the challenge, the stress, the circumstance that is causing you stress or difficulty, and instead begin to focus with all of your energy, all of your attention on resolution. The feeling tone of resolution. And so what we'd like to say to each and every one of you is that this is the way that you move through difficulty, challenge, stressful circumstances, chaos in these physical lifetimes. Each and every one of you will experience varying degrees of challenge. And so we ask you to, first of all, when you're seeking resolution to any of these challenges, is that you first begin to focus all of your energy and all of your attention on the feeling tone of what you think you would experience if that challenge were resolved. Because here's what's true: you can't resolve any of your current problems, challenges, if you are operating in that same vibrational frequency that caused the problem or challenge in the first place. But what most of you do is you experience the challenge, and then from that same vibrational frequency of the challenge, you try to take action. You try all sorts of things in terms of taking physical action. You try all sorts of things to try to resolve the challenge, but you haven't yet shifted your vibration into resolution. And so this is why we're asking you to focus on resolution. And notice how we're not asking you to think up an action plan that will lead to resolution. We're asking you to focus on the vibrational frequency of resolution, of all is well, of things working out, of everything is not just fine, but everything is exciting and wonderful and joyful. I'm excited. I'm happy to be alive. I love my life. We're starting to ask you to refocus your attention on this higher vibration that is actually more representative of your true self, what we call your Satnam presence, your true identity. And so as you shift your attention, what happens is you begin to open to the guidance that you need, the intuition, the guidance that you need to move forward in a way that is efficient and graceful. An absence of struggle. There is a great deal of focus on struggle in your reality because there is a false thought form that says that if I struggle, I'm worthy. And so many of you receive so many accolades. The more you struggle, the more love you receive. We'd ask you in this moment to notice that the way of the universe, looking out into your nature kingdom, it's not that there's struggle present. It's that there's flow present, the flow of divine intelligence. And so what's true is that you can begin to operate in this reality with much more grace and much more flow if you begin to work energetically first, and then allow that energetic frequency, which is your true self, to offer you guidance as to how to move forward. And we feel that that will alleviate much of that stuck sensation or feeling that many of you are sensing at this time. And so with all that in mind, how can we serve you on this day? What questions do you have for us at this time?
That was so beautiful. Thank you for opening up with such a wise thought pattern and energy. How does our perception of time shift the more we focus on the energy of resolution?
Well, first of all, we would say that your perception of time is a human perception. It's a perception of your human construct, because the true identity, the soul self, operates outside of time. So another way of saying that, and the reason that it is effective and powerful to focus on this word resolution, is because you could say that at this higher frequency and at this space which exists outside of time, that all of your so-called problems and challenges and stressful situations have already been resolved. Because in these higher realms where your soul dwells, the moment the challenge is created, the solution or resolution is created at the exact same time. So as you focus on resolution, what you're also doing is beginning to align with the part of yourself that already has the solution, and that had the solution the minute that the challenge or problem was created in this reality. In this reality, you experience a sort of time delay, right? But in the higher realms, there is no time. There is just expansion and evolution.
If we operate on this false belief that it's the struggle that makes us worthy, what then, if it's not struggle, what does make us worthy? How can we replace that disempowering belief for one that can empower us?
So first of all, each and every one of you, we've said, is intuitive and psychic, right? And so feel that truth and feel your ability to feel and sense in a clairsentient way, you can feel truth. And we ask you to do that because we're going to ask you a question and we're going to ask you to feel for the answer. So when you feel into that belief, that thought form, that struggle is what makes me worthy, does that feel like a human fabrication, or does that feel like something coming from your soul?
It feels like a contraction. Like I have to work hard to be able to do this and feel this, but it doesn't seem like that would be something from the soul.
Right, and so you've made it a very important point that anytime you are connected with something that is false or not true, that your physical body, which is a psychic instrument, will respond with a contraction. And anytime you are connected or exposed to something that is aligned with source energy, your body will feel a sort of expansive sensation. And so first notice that. And then to answer your question on worthiness, you are worthy because you exist. You are worthy because you exist. You are born worthy. You are born deserving. You are worthy because you exist as this one-of-a-kind emanation of divine intelligence. We see each and every one of you as works of art. The diversity that you each emanate, the beauty that you emanate, right? So there's this worthiness simply because you exist. It's not that you have to go do something to make you worthy. And so we're so happy and excited to be discussing this because this reflects much of the work we're doing with you at this time in terms of revealing and releasing all of the false thought forms that hold you in that contracted state. So in your reality, you're programmed to believe that in order to be worthy, you need to achieve. You need to work hard. You need to struggle. And so in this moment, feel into that. Does that actually feel true, or does that cause a contraction? We feel those are good examples of false thought forms. And when we say false, what we mean is thought forms or energies that are not in alignment with source energy. And so feel into this truth that I am worthy because I exist as a divine creation. And there's nothing that I need to achieve or accomplish in order to prove that worthiness. Now, that doesn't mean that in this playground that is physical reality, that I won't do things, take action, quote unquote, achieve. It's just that those achievements will have nothing to do with my feelings of worth as a being. They're independent from that. And so when I begin my day with the knowingness that I'm a worthy being, I'm a work of art, can you sense what great, quote unquote, achievements, unfoldments would take place from that being your starting point? But many of you have it backwards. You feel unworthy and you've been programmed to believe that you have to, quote unquote, do something or accomplish something in order to prove that worthiness. And so that is where the struggle is. We wish for you to see and sense yourself now as more of an emanation of energy, a broadcast of your soul self. And so, yes, there will be action. There will be unfoldments. You will do things. You will move toward things. You will even accomplish things. We just don't use the word accomplish very often because of what that means within your mental construct. We'd like you to see and sense and feel life as more of a playground and celebration, and see and sense and feel yourself as more of an emanation of source energy. And when you do so, it starts to raise the ceiling on what it is that you will accomplish, because there are no limitations, right? If you're coming at it from the sense of, I need to prove my worthiness, and this is what I think I need to do to prove my worthiness, much of which, again, you have taken on as a result of what others have told you, then you create a sort of ceiling in terms of what you will do and what you will accomplish in this lifetime. But if you think of yourself as more of an emanation, then you open yourself up to working with source energy in a way that may surprise and delight you.
Do you have any insight as to why the mental construct was created in the first place?
The mental construct of struggle?
Of the human mental construct that we have.
In terms of achievement and feeling your worthiness connected to that. Is that what you're asking?
The question was going more along the lines of, when we incarnate into this physical reality, we are given a physical body and a mental construct.
Yes.
And this mental construct sometimes creates a lot of struggle and unworthiness and a lot of different things. Why was that mental construct created in the first place?
We see where you're going with that now. So you could think of the mental construct as sort of the software through which you operate in this reality, right? So without that software, there would be no reflection in the external reality, because it's that software that is programming your external experience. So there would be no external experience without the mental construct. And in and of itself, that mental construct is not a negative thing. It has this spectrum of frequency that you can experience. Now, what's true about that spectrum of frequencies that you experience when you incarnate into these lifetimes, these human suits, is that spectrum serves you. Because part of the reason that you're here playing and celebrating and experiencing is to clarify and understand who it is you truly are. You can't do that without variation. And so when you enter this experience and you experience all these variances in vibrational frequency, including the variances within the mental construct, then you experience firsthand what it is that you're not. And once you know what you're not, you can feel into what you truly are. So that duality, as many call it, serves you in that way. So this spectrum of variation is very important, and the mental construct is very important. And you don't want to get rid of the mental construct. You want to begin to realize that that is not you. Just like the physicality, the physical body, your physical body is a sort of vessel through which you get to experience life. Your mental construct is a sort of vessel through which you get to create life. So you need it. It's just that you want to start to realize what's going on in there. What's going on in that mental construct? What is on repeat? What have I been thinking for years that might not be true or might not be life affirming? And once you realize it, it is sort of like plucking the virus out of the computer. Things run much more smoothly in that state.
What mental constructs do you feel that humanity would need to embody and implement into their software in order for us to move to the highest timeline that we could be on, heading into that golden age that has been prophesized for decades and thousands of years?
Well, it's very simple, although it may be a bit of a leap for some individuals on the planet at this time. But this realization, it's actually more of a thought. It's more than a thought form. It's a truth. But that realization that all is one, right? That there's only one being here, that everything is divine. Everything is an emanation of source. Everything is a work of art. Recognizing the holiness in each and every being, in each and everything. So in doing so, you start to see your reality and see all beings through the eyes of your higher self. So you see the holiness, the divinity in all things. And you see yourself in all things. So once you start to see everything from that perspective, you cannot do harm onto another. Right? There's no impulse to create harm for another being when, number one, you're seeing them as divine, and number two, you know that you are the same being in different forms. But because there is this illusion of separation in your reality, that's what facilitates much of the harm and destruction and chaos on your planet.
And the wars.
And the wars, right? We've said before about war, that war only emerges from the misperception of separation. If that perception of separation was not there, there would be no war. Whether that's a war on a large scale between countries, or a war within your own household, that wouldn't exist. Because when we say that all is one and everything is divine, and you start to feel into the truth of that, what underlies that truth is a feeling tone or a vibration of reverence. Can you feel that reverence? And so if reverence and honor and awe and wonder is present, then you're not going to wake up and do harm. Right? And so in your reality, because much of the individuals in your reality are not operating there yet, there's this illusion of separation. Not only the illusion of separation within individuals on your planet, but there's also the illusion of separation between you and Mother Earth. Right? So that's another illusion. Mother Earth is an alive, conscious, sentient being emanating an energy, a creation of divine intelligence. Right? And so you want to start to see and sense and feel this connection and this reverence and this awe that everything is God. Everything is divine. Everything is emanating divine beauty. Now, you don't always see that because, again, you have these mental constructs of what quote-unquote beauty is in your reality, right? But if you shift your perspective, then you start to see things differently. You start to see things from this higher perspective, the perspective of the soul. And when you shift your perception, you also shift your daily habits, your daily actions. You become a different person.
How do we begin to access the different fractal aspects of ourselves that are living out in parallel realities that you've talked about?
So just let us first begin with a brief explanation of that. We've said before that we do not think of your multidimensional incarnations as past lives. We think of them more in terms of parallel lives because, again, from this higher perspective, there is no time. So you could think of yourself as incarnating simultaneously into all these different fractals or emanations simultaneously. And so what's true is that for your human self, there is a sort of overwhelm that could take place with that, right? This mechanism, which we would refer to your brain, your physiology, as a sort of filtering device that blocks out the awareness of all of those other simultaneous incarnations taking place. What we will say is that when you quote unquote heal, when you bring yourself into alignment with your higher self, that realignment and that quote unquote healing is translated throughout all of your simultaneous incarnations, because you could think of yourself as a sort of holographic expression in which when there's a change within this soul self, or in terms of shifting that perception or shifting that energy, that gets translated holographically throughout your incarnations. So there's not specifically something you need to do. However, what we'll say is this: if there is a fragment or a fractal of yourself in another incarnation that either you would receive benefit from their wisdom or vice versa, we remind you that you do have a sort of energetic or telepathic connection to these other aspects of yourself. And so in the quiet moments of meditation, that which you need to know will be revealed to you. But we would say you don't have to quote unquote specifically do something, that there is an impetus to evolve, That's just the nature of who you are. And so because of that and because of your holographic nature, and when you shift something here, you shift it across all dimensions, all timelines, all incarnations. If you are seeking to sort of be more conscious of that process, then we would say in the quiet moments of your meditation, you could ask your higher self to make you aware of perhaps another incarnation that you could connect to energetically, telepathically, where you could share information. And what you refer to as past life regressions or those types of experiences facilitate that sort of realignment or healing.
What is one thing that most people don't know about the Andromeda star system?
Well, we have talked about this before, but one thing that most people don't know is that there is a variation in terms of the dimensionality. So we've been asked before, what dimension do you reside at? That's always a difficult question to answer because much like your reality, there's a sort of variation in terms of the beings that dwell there. So the first thing we'll say is that there's a sort of variation between the 6th and 12th dimension, variation of beings. And what we'd like to say about that as well is that the human mind can often think when there are these different levels of consciousness or different levels of perception, the human mind thinks of that in terms of a hierarchy, in terms of lower versus higher. We would say, we've been talking about this recently, that there is a benefit to that variation. It's not that one is better or worse. It's that each and every dimension offers a different perspective. That different perspective contributes to the whole that is the collective. So we would say that. We'd also say that there are a variety of beings in this civilization. The ones that you may know or feel more familiar with are a sort of water spirit or water being. Within your mental construct, you'd identify them as sort of mermaid, shapeshifter sort of being. And we bring that to your attention simply because they are masters at this alignment with flow, right? They carry not only the frequency, but the quality that is flow, flowing with source, flowing with the universe, right? So for those of you that are interested in connecting with this collective, for those of you that have an awareness that you're already connected with this collective, see if you can sense into that quality that water carries, which is flow, right? And awareness, and start to notice for yourself, draw that energy, that frequency into this physical incarnation so that you can create more flow within this human life experience.
Does that mean that humans can also experience that energy of shape-shifting?
They can, but in a slightly different way. So we actually recommend this idea of shape-shifting in this way. And you could even think of what we've described today in terms of this resolution as a sort of shape-shifting. So think of shape-shifting in terms of energetic shape-shifting. So in this moment, we'll give you an example. Think of someone in your physical reality that you admire. Think of someone that you admire. And you don't have to think of why you admire them. Just think of someone, first person that comes to mind that you admire. And then begin to, almost like a radio, begin to tune yourself to the energetic that is that being. Feel into their energy. Now, what's true is that the reason that you admire that person is because you carry the same qualities within your own being, but there's a part of you that hasn't yet reached that state of being able to either embody or express those qualities yet. But the good news is that you can. So as you start to tune yourself to that being, in a way you begin to shape shift energetically to match those qualities. Now the qualities already exist within you. what you're doing is you're starting to amplify them within you and starting to shape shift yourself into more of a match to that which you wish to become. So that's how we bring through this idea of shape-shifting in a practical way. Many of you think of shape-shifting in terms of Native American traditions, where one shape-shifts into a different bird or a different animal. All that is beautiful. But what's more practical is to notice that you can energetically shift yourself, right, and take on different qualities, or we should say amplify different qualities to assist you in your own personal evolution.
You've also talked about starseeds and their role in holding down a new frequency for the planet. What are your insights as to the children that are coming into the planet right now, that are here to anchor the new consciousness? What is their role? Because they're going to be the leaders of the future. What words of wisdom would you have for us regarding those younger starseeds?
Well, there's never been a time in the history of Earth with more starseeds, more light workers present on the planet. And of course, the reason for that is because this is a time when there is a need for much more support, energetically speaking. And again, if you think of our introductory lecture or our introductory talk, the support that's needed is not so much action. The support that's needed is being able to tune into a higher vibrational frequency. Again, we'll use the word resolution as an access point for that. So tuning into a higher vibrational frequency and then beginning to emanate that, because that emanation feeds the collective. Now, you may have heard of the words tipping point or some sort of ideal like that. Now, what's true is that the more beings that incarnate, that are able to access these higher frequencies, and the more those are fed into the collective, then your civilization will begin to shift as a result of that. Again, where you are headed, ultimately, is that there will come a point in time when those perceptions of separation will not exist. And part of that is because you are shifting your actual level of awareness into a place where, again, you will not perceive that separation. You may perceive it physically, but you won't perceive it energetically. So we would say to, let's say, the parents of these little ones coming in, one thing to keep in mind is, again, this process of how one's soul frequency is lowered through this process of, we'll call it domestication, right? So when a being is born, there's a purity. Each and every one of you can relate to that. When you see a baby, there's a sort of purity there, right? The lowering of frequency occurs when this domestication process takes place and when the being is implanted with these thought forms, ideas, and beliefs that are not in harmony with source. So we would say, as parents, you want to keep that in mind. You want to, first of all, for yourself, go about this process of reprogramming yourself, right? Reprogramming your software into alignment with your higher self. As you do so, you will not program your little ones with those false thought forms either. You will see the harm in doing so. And so we would say, let your children, let your young ones form their own beliefs, if possible, their own ideas from their experience. And just notice how much of an influence on your planet. You talk about influencers quite a bit. Notice that the caregivers and the parents, you are influencers. Now, you influence mostly with your energy and your emanation. Again, this is why you take care of yourself. You take care of your frequency. You pay attention to what is going on within the mental construct. You make upgrades when necessary. And then when these young ones come in, if you are going to project your thought forms onto them, well, then you want to make sure that those thought forms, those beliefs carry the frequency of harmony, peace, unconditional love, connection, joy, beauty, excitement. right? So just be aware of how you are influencing the young ones around you.
I know that you inhabit light bodies, and here we're right now inhabiting physical bodies, and the physical body sometimes experiences illness or what we would call dis-ease. How do you view these things that happen to the physical body that bring us out of misalignment or bring us into misalignment? And what is your view on healing the physical body from your perspective?
So first of all, recognize that the physical body is the manifestation of what is going on energetically within you, right? And so that physical manifestation really is a result, if there's a misalignment in terms of illness, pain, disease, that what you might call a misalignment is a sort of physical manifestation of a misaligned energy, likely one that has been in place for many moments in time, right? Because these things generally do not happen overnight, right? Perhaps in the case of an accident or something of that nature, it appears to have happened overnight, but we would say there's always an energetic imprint first before the physical. So notice that first. And then rather than being at war with your body if it is exhibiting some sort of challenge, begin to thank your body. And again, hold this vibration of reverence for the body because it's communicating with you. And yes, it's doing so through pain, perhaps, illness, dis-ease. But this is a form of communication. It's saying there's something you need to look at mentally, emotionally, energetically, right? Because generally speaking, when a being is open and receptive and experiencing the full flow of source energy through their system, which we'd say is more rare at this time, but still, when that is occurring through the system, the body is continually revitalized by that energy, and it's not likely that any sort of disease or illness would manifest. Now, we've said before, we'll say it again, that this duality serves you. And so many beings, when they incarnate, there's a sort of decision, or curiosity is a better word, to experience what that would be like through the human body. In other words, there's a curiosity of what it would feel like within the body to have something that is sort of out of alignment, so to speak. Because again, that duality serves you in some way. So there's that. But we would say, if your body is manifesting something that is challenging, we would say, rather than beginning a war with your body, start to notice that your body is a sort of energetic tool, a sort of psychic instrument, a physical representation of the truth, capital T truth, of what is unfolding. Start to feel into that, because really what is happening is your body is communicating so that you can make a shift energetically, emotionally, mentally. And so that is a blessing and a benefit. It's serving you. The minute you make your body an enemy, right? The minute you start to push against what is manifesting, then you lower the chances of your healing because you're not receiving the communication in the form that it's being given.
Sarai, one of the last topics I would love to bring up to the surface right now is, you've said that around the year 2027, humanity will begin to come to the realization that we're not alone in this universe and that we are surrounded by galactic interdimensional beings. I can imagine that there are very potential timelines that could go for humanity as to how we react to this disclosure. What words of advice would you have for us regarding allowing a smooth transition into realizing that we are not the only races in this universe and that we are open to our galactic family again?
That is a beautiful question. We'll begin just by revisiting the way in which we began interacting with Karen. And so, if you can recall what was talked about earlier, there was a very gentle, there was a very subtle interaction that took place over a number of years, right, to get her to this point in which she can vocalize our energy. And so that began in a very subtle way of just realizing there's an energy present. Oh, there's a color to this energy. There's a feeling, there's a location. She could feel it's the location in terms of where it was in relation to her physicality. It was very gentle. And then it unfolded in a sort of progressive way. It unfolded in terms of writing and then eventually speaking. We share that with you because what is true, and really feel into this as we say it, is that this contact experience has already begun. And the way that it is occurring at this time is energetically and telepathically. Energetically and telepathically. The reason for that is because that is a very gentle, subtle unfoldment and acclamation, not only to our energy, but to our message and our desire to be of service, our desire to help. And so notice, for all those listening, that it is likely, if you find this content interesting, that you are already having interactions with those that you may describe as ETs or star beings. You're already having that interaction because we don't wish to show up and have that be a jarring event for your physicality, right? And just to clarify, it's not us specifically that is going to show up because we don't hold physicality, but there are beings that do hold physicality that will be gently making contact with you. Now, there's a sort of, you've heard of perhaps the Galactic Federation, there's a sort of collective or group of beings working together to gently introduce energetically and telepathically first the presence of these beings so that it's not a shock to your system. So we would say don't second guess when you feel that you're having an interaction. The interaction is real. You're having the interaction. How can you facilitate that? You facilitate that because telepathic and energetic communication is subtle. You facilitate that communication by quieting your physicality, quieting your mind, sitting in meditation, and listening. You listen. You listen. You bring yourself to an open, receptive state, and you listen. Those of you that are interested in this broadcast, it's not an accident that you are listening to this. You are each receiving energy. And again, as we've said before, your main objective is to become an emanation of this energy. Those in other dimensions are assisting you and supporting you in that you may call life purpose or that destiny. And so we would say don't second guess it. If you are experiencing it, then it is happening. Now, some of you will feel fear at that because it is foreign to your human self, and you may ask a common question, which is, how do I know the intentions of those interacting? Many of you are fearful of interacting with a lower frequency civilization. So a couple answers to that. Number one, as you meditate, as you clear your mental construct, as you become this emanation of a higher frequency, you only have access to beings at the higher frequency, right? You don't have access to those at a lower frequency. But we would say if you feel any sort of discomfort, then you want to use your feeling sense, your clairsentience, to feel into the energy of those making contact with you and feel into the energy of the message. If the message is one of unity, if the message is one of love and compassion, and even a sense of humor, sometimes we bring through a sort of playful vibration. if that is what you feel as you interact with these extra dimensional beings, then we would say, see if you can calm your system and release fear. And take as much time as you need to form that relationship. It may take a few years to form that relationship to a point where there is trust, right? And understanding and camaraderie. Same as your human relationships, it can take time. So let that time unfold, right? But know that you are here for a reason. You are here to be an emanation of a higher frequency. To the starseeds listening, you are here to bring that frequency of your unique star system that you are associated with. You're here to bring that through in order to uplift the collective and those around you. And so if you feel a resonance as we speak these words, then know that resonance is an indication that we are speaking something you already know to be true.
Mm-hmm. Could you feel into the unique star system that I resonate with? Out of curiosity?
Yes. So one moment. So as we tune into you, we're aware of the water element. The water element. And we should say that when we speak to starseeds, what's true is that you are not from one system. However, you have a favorite system, right? And so when we speak of bringing through an energy, you could say that that is because that's your favorite energy. That's what you are here to broadcast. So as we feel into you, we are aware of water and water beings, the whales, the dolphins, this oceanic kind of quality. And so we would say we would connect you with Sirius B, and we would connect you with Andromeda also. And so perhaps that's why you feel such a resonance with this energy and with our teachings as well.
Beautiful, Sarai. Thank you so much for making this contact. We appreciate you so much. And I know this will not be our last time speaking.
And so just for a moment before we part, we just wish to, number one, bring through not just words of appreciation, but a broadcast of appreciation. So take a moment to feel that in your entire being, for the work that you do, but also for the being that you are and this emanation that you are broadcasting in every moment in time. And so until we do meet again, which we will leave you with a greeting Sat Nam, meaning true identity. We hold the frequency that is your true identity and we broadcast it back to you in every moment in time. And so Sat Nam on this day.
Sat Nam. Thank you. Welcome back.
Oh my gosh. I always feel like my eyes have been glued shut for whoever knows how much time just went by. Anyways.
Well, as I just looked at the time, we've been going for literally, as you said that, 1:22 and 22 seconds.
Wow, that's good.
Right when you came out of your channeling. That's crazy.
Amazing.
How do you feel
well,
after
I hope
that?
it was, how do I feel? I always feel like, when you wake up in the morning, you just had a dream and you're like, what just happened? That's always kind of how I feel. It's like I can remember just little blips of what was said. But yeah, I always just feel kind of dreamy. It always takes me a minute to just land back.
Yeah. Is there one or a couple of things that you recall from the channeled message that just came through from Sarai that you feel stuck out to you?
Well, the word resolution was the word that was in my mind at about 11:30. So I was doing my breath work and I just got smacked. It was like I got smacked in the head with the word resolution. So I can remember that, but I was receiving that. It's like, okay, this is what we're going to talk about. And I think they do that because it gives my human self a little bit of peace to know that, okay, they've got something prepared, right? Because it's like, okay,
they're prepared.
For me, it's Like, I hope you guys have something prepared, because I don't want to, like, you know what I mean? Just get on and be like, they don't have anything to say. So yeah, the word resolution stood out, and there was something about all is one that stood out to me too. And just the feeling of the energy coming through was really like a very strong broadcast, like a very, whoosh, I don't know if you could feel it, but it was like a very strong, broadcast this time. So
Powerful energy. They have the powerful
I would
energy.
say that it varies. Sometimes I feel, as I'm tuning into you, that you can handle you know what I mean? Like you can handle that larger broadcast. Whereas I think they calibrate sometimes to meet whoever I'm speaking with, to meet that person where they're at energetically. But because it feels to me like you've done so much exploring and inner work, that you could receive that more intense emanation. So
speaking about exploring, in another interview, when you were asked about your connection with Sarai, you said that you were going to start having and going through some QHHT sessions created by Dolores Cannon to really understand and have a deeper connection, and get some answers. Do you feel open to sharing anything that may have come through regarding that connection that you have with Sarai?
Yes, if I can remember it, because I did have two. Mm-hmm. And, they always tell you to listen to your recording. And I didn't listen to the second one. And I actually have no idea for that second one. I'm like, man, I got to listen to that, because I don't remember. I do remember in the first one, something that was really powerful was that it was like my higher self is a member of this Andromedan collective. So in a way, I'm like beaming myself back through myself. Like, it was very strange. I don't even know how to describe it in this moment. But there was a feeling of resonance with it, and that I could feel that one of my fractals is there with them. And it was facilitating not only the wisdom, but the energetic transmission. So that was super interesting. That's really the only thing I can remember, but I would highly recommend QHHT. It's a very efficient way to get you in touch with these other, whether you want to call it past lives or parallel lives, it's a really efficient way to get you in touch with these other fractals of yourself. But also, if there's any healing that needs to take place, it'll put you right in touch with whatever the issue is. So.
I'm curious there, you mentioned the higher self. How would you explain the relationship of the human with the higher self? Is it one and the same, or is it like a projection? How do you see it?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So Sarai talks about the human construct as being there's the physical body, the mental body, and our emotions, which are intertwined with the mental body. And then there is this personality. And what's really beautiful about each and every one of us is the uniqueness, I think. Like that, I think that's one thing that I received in terms of doing mediumship, is that when a spirit comes through and I'm describing the unique qualities or the unique quirks, even, like, she got her hair done every Friday, something as simple as that. There's so much beauty in the human. But I think the higher self is that true self, that source self, that in a sense, the way that Sarai has described it to me is that our soul self never really leaves that realm that you may describe of as spirit or the spirit world, right? So there's this projection through the human form of the higher self to varying degrees. So I think one of the goals, we don't like the word, Sarai doesn't like the word goals, but one of the intentions of the spiritual path is to open to be a pure expression of your higher self, like this human self, become a sort of emanation of your higher self, right? So did that answer your question? I feel like the higher self is our soul that gets broadcast through this human self, but the human is temporary. This self is temporary. The soul is eternal.
Very temporary.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
How did your life change when you started to integrate more with the higher self and the soul?
Oh my gosh. everything seemed to change. But it wasn't that I was consciously trying to make changes. I think it was, I look back and I notice that when I started channeling Sarai, a lot of my friendships just rearranged themselves. It wasn't that it was a conscious thing, but I think when you start to make energetic shifts in yourself, that trickles out. Benefit was that I started, making all these new friends that were more connected with the teachings and with that as the spiritual path. So, yeah, I think everything has changed. One thing that has been a beautiful shift is just the way that I see myself. Because when I look back, I spent a lot of time as an artist, a musician. But I had this inner talk constantly that was very critical and judgmental. And I really had that belief active of not good enough. And no matter what I managed to achieve or accomplish, or I would get to that point and it still wasn't good enough. So I was kind of on this path of chasing, which a lot of us are. And when I started to receive some of these channel teachings and really started to embody the fact that, in this moment, I'm enough. And I started to, distance myself and appreciate, Karen for all the, whatever quirks and, whatever's going on. Not perfect, but, Sarai has this saying that she repeats often when you're looking at your human self, that you say, isn't that cute? Isn't that cute? So you mess up, you make a mistake, you have regrets. Rather than getting down on yourself, you say, isn't that cute?
I love that.
So I started using that with myself, and I released that critical voice that, I was so hard on myself for so long. And then that feeling that we were speaking of earlier of excitement and joy, right, and passion, I noticed that was starting to just be there, almost underneath the surface all the time. Because it wasn't that I needed to accomplish something or be more. It was just that I just needed to accept who I am in the moment and see myself differently. So that's been a big shift.
Yeah. When you look at nature and you see a lion attack a prey or a deer and not get the game, let's say, the lion is not over judging himself about it. He said, he just goes, or she just goes, I'm on to the next one. And I think that's a little bit of, that energy that in the spiritual community, we're not taught to be that fierce warrior, if I don't get it the first time, then I'll get it the second time. And I had this conversation the other day with another guest of how sometimes that spirituality is missing that energy of being fierce and fearless. And that just comes with removing the layers of judgment that we have on ourselves, because it gives us the opportunity to try again and go again until, we get it. I wouldn't say right, but we create a better instance for ourselves the next time we do it.
For sure. Yeah. If you think of it again as an emanation rather than like a specific thing that you want to achieve or accomplish, even though that's okay to have, and if you're moving towards something, but the difference is, are you trying to find worthiness in that? Are you saying to yourself, I'm only worthy if that thing happens, or if I achieve that thing? That's where it gets all kind of tangled in your mind. If you know that you got your own back no matter what happens, you're going to appreciate yourself, love yourself no matter what happens, then you can kind of just let things unfold and not be so, attached to specific outcomes.
Yes.
I think now I look back and I'm like, wow, everything that's happening now, the channeling, everything, I could not have planned this. I didn't plan this. I never had an intention of doing this. It's more fulfilling than anything I've ever done. It's so amazing and exciting, and is connecting me with, people that I love so dearly and forming relationships that I cherish. And so I didn't have any sort of goal or intention for any of this to happen. So I think when we let go a little bit, we open up to let our higher self and let source step in and maybe create something even more incredible than the idea that we're holding in our minds.
Yeah.
So
We let the universe surprise us. And I
Yeah.
wanted to thank you again for surprising us today with your magic. We end every episode with a segment called the Final Trio, which are just, rapid questions we ask at the end. But before that, where would you send people to connect with your work even further, to connect with you, Sarai? I know you work one-on-one with people. You also have your private community. Where would you send people for that?
Yeah, so you can check out my website, which is intuitivekb.com. All my links are on my website. But if you want to check out my YouTube channel too, then if you type in Intuitive Karen Bell on YouTube, my channel will come up and you can subscribe and check out all my channeled videos there from Sarai. So
Beautiful. Thank you. For the first question I have for you is, what is the most profound lesson that you have learned from your own channeled material?
that's a good question. That I'm not my mind, that I'm not my mental construct. That's not who I am. Yeah.
I asked Sarai, what is something that most people don't know about the Andromeda star system? But I'll ask you, what is something that most people don't know about you?
Oh my gosh. Well, this is just kind of, I don't know why this is coming up, but some of you may know Chris Hadfield. He was the commander of the space station a few years ago. He's a Canadian astronaut. And I don't know why this is coming up, but I talked to him while he was in space. I talked to him on the
moon.
phone. While he was on the space station, and I talked to him on the phone. So he's a friend of a friend, and I won't get into the details of how that phone conversation, but I have talked to someone in space on the phone.
So your galactic communication ranges from very different types of communications.
Yeah, I've had
on an iPhone, like on a.
No, it was on like a landline. Yeah, it was on a landline. Well, I'll tell you, I'll try to make the story brief, but I have a friend who's very close friends with him, and as part of she's a musician, and as part of her show, he was calling in from space as part of the musical concert, and they were going to talk to him, but they didn't have anyone to answer the phone when he called. Because they were going to be like in the midst of their set playing. So they're like, oh, Karen, you can answer the phone when Chris Hadfield calls. So he calls, and I'm like trying to make small talk with, the commander of the space station.
While he's in space.
While he's in space. Like, what's going on up there? How's the weather? I didn't know what to say. I was super embarrassed and shy, but it was a very memorable experience.
Well, I didn't tell you this, but I'm actually in a space station right now.
Really?
I'm joking.
So I'm talking to space again.
No, that's a bucket list item. I love it. We ask a question at the end. The first two were personalized to you. And the last question we ask at the end of every show, we call it the time capsule question. And it requires us to travel out a little bit into the future, around 15 to 20 years down the line. And I chose out those time frames because it's going to be a time when the younger generations of today are going to be stepping into leadership positions around the world. Imagine your 8-year-old son in 20 years, he's going to be stepping into the workforce. He's going to be stepping into the real world and leading in his own way. And these children of today are going to need a lot of mentorship and guidance once they get to those positions of leadership. So you were given the opportunity to leave behind a time capsule for these leaders, and you could include anything that you wanted in there. It could be something physical, energetic, frequential, a word, anything that your mind can conceive of, but knowing that when these leaders open up the time capsule, they'll be equipped then to lead humanity into its next phase of evolution. What would you put inside of the time capsule?
Oh my gosh. Well, I think of this a lot because I think of what I want my son, what I want my son to, like, how he wants, what are the words I'm trying to think of? I think of what I want to offer him.
Yeah, your legacy.
And I don't want, I actually don't want to tell him what to do. I want to tell him how to access his own higher self for guidance. what I would tell them and what I would leave in the time capsule is follow your passion, because that energy of passion is, again, communication from your soul. That, again, that feeling that you have when you're tuned in to that which is your path, you feel passion in your body. So I don't know what each and every one of those little individual paths are, but I do know if I, left a little handwritten note to follow your passion, I feel like that would direct them within to really get aligned with the path that would bring them joy and serve the world as well. So, yeah.
And what is your passion?
Oh, I have a lot. I have many passions, but I would say right now that my passion is my work. I love channeling Sarai. I love the transformation that I see with people when they receive some tidbit of something that helps them. There's nothing that makes me feel happier or more alive than when I see that transformation, and it's not coming from me, but it's coming through me, and I'm just so grateful to be a part of it. Yeah. So grateful.
And I just wanted to honor you for offering yourself to be able to create that transformation out in the world. And this has been such a beautiful interaction, transmission, conversation. I know we will have to do this again, Karen.
Yes.
Beaming you with an energy broadcast of love. And until next time.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much for having me. Sat Nam to you.
Sat Nam.